The National Health Insurance Scheme (NHIS) was established in 2003 by the erstwhile Kufuor administration with a goal to provide equitable access and financial coverage for basic healthcare services to Ghanaians. The NHIS has replaced the cash and carry system, where the health need of an individual was only attended to at the hospital after initial payment for the service was made. Funding for the NHIS comes from individual premium payments, the National Health Insurance Levy, made up of the domestic value-added tax collection, transfer from the existing Social Security and National Insurance Trust, and customs collection. To ensure that all Ghanaians made some contribution to the scheme, a 2.5% health insurance levy on selected goods and services was passed into law so that the money collected could be put into a national health insurance fund to complement contributions to the district health insurance schemes. Despite the successes chalked by the scheme so far, funding for its smooth operation continues to be a major problem for government. Service providers have often complained of not receiving their claims on time. 10 years after the implementation of the NHIS, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Health Insurance Authority, Sylvester Mensah, says with the increased enrollment of subscribers, payment of claims has been a major challenge, threatening the sustainability of the scheme. He has therefore proposed for the introduction of some levies to help support the scheme.
Looking at additional funds from the road fund, looking at levy on tobacco and alcoholic beverages, looking at 20% of communication tax assigned to health insurance, and also looking at levy from the petrochemical industry. We're looking forward to enhance financial sustainability, to intensify clinical audits, to scale up the instant ID card issuance, to increase coverage of the poor, to improve computerization, and to shorten claims processing time.
According to the Chief Executive Officer of NHIA, Sylvester Mensah, the authority spends more than 50% of its revenue on payments of pharmaceuticals, a situation that needs to be immediately solved. If that is the case, many have also wondered why it is taking the NHIA so long in introducing the prescription of herbal medicines onto the scheme if so much of its revenue is channeled into the purchase of foreign drugs. Meanwhile, the pilot of the capitation on the NHIS introduced in the Ashanti region has faced serious challenges with some health facilities opting out of the scheme. The capitation is a provider payment method in which providers are paid in advance, a predetermined fixed rate, to provide a defined set of services for each individual enrolled with the provider for a fixed period of time. The per capita payment of 1.75 Ghana cedis per month of a patient was considered woefully inadequate by service providers, leading to the withdrawal of services by some health facilities. Aside this, government was expected to implement a one-time premium policy, a key campaign promise of the National Democratic Congress that brought them into power. However, stakeholders have argued that while the one-time premium had the advantage of ensuring universal coverage, it was also essential for the government to acknowledge that its implementation will further widen the funding gap and deeply erode the capacity of the NHIS to be sustainable. What then is the state of the nation with regards to sustaining the National Health Insurance Scheme? The Public Utilities and Regulatory Commission (PURC) announced the increase of 78.9% for electricity tariff and 52% for water tariff on September 26. Various stakeholders, including organized labor, kicked against the increase, describing it as too harsh for the consumer to bear. President Mahama then constituted a technical working group to look into the issue and advise government on what to do. The group came out with a report in October stating that a 50% increase in the price of electricity is not sustainable. The analysis made by the technical working group indicated that in order to cover at a minimum the cost of generation and transmission, tariff adjustments above 60% might be necessary, taking into consideration the need to minimize the negative budget implication. Following threats by organized labor to embark on a nationwide strike on November 18 if government does not reduce the tariff, government on Sunday 10th November announced the reduction of electricity tariff by 25% to take retrospective effect from 1st October. The action by government will translate into a subsidy of over 400 million Ghana cedis to be paid to the utility companies to maintain a steady supply of electricity. Meanwhile, analysts believe government will face more fiscal pressure in its latest move to cushion electricity consumers with a 25% reduction in electricity tariff. Government had budgeted to spend a total of 1 billion Ghana cedis on subsidies this year, while targeting a 9.0% fiscal deficit for the year. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) has been consistent in demanding that government scrapped the subsidies since they were not targeted at the poor and rather spent resources in other pro-poor social interventions. The subsidies were believed to be part of the cause of the recurrent annual fiscal deficits the country has been experiencing, as in 2012 when its budget deficit reached 11.8%. Meanwhile, government has also asked the PURC to start the implementation of the automatic tariff adjustment formula from January 2014. In spite of this, TUC has hinted of further negotiating with government to reduce water tariff. Concerns being raised by analysts are that should government continue subsidizing utility tariffs? Are consumers overburdening government with their demands? What needs to be done for consumers and government to reach a consensus on how to pay for utility tariff without putting undue pressure on government's budget? What is the state of the nation with regards to utility tariffs? The population of older persons between the ages of 60 years and above is projected to increase to about 2.6 billion in 2050. The 2010 population census indicated that persons 60 years and above had increased to about 1.7 million, representing 6.7% of the total population. The older generation has enough experience and knowledge that the younger generation can tap into in order to speed up socio-economic development of the nation. But it appears they are relegated to the background when issues of national agenda are concerned. More worrying is the fact that not much is being done to enhance their welfare. Most elderly people are left to spend the rest of their lives in boredom.
All what we are pleading, the government should take care of us, help us, especially in our drug. Many a time when you go to the hospital, the essential drug for the elderly, you will be told the National Health Insurance doesn't cover it. And this bothers a lot.
In 2003, a national aging policy was prepared and submitted to Cabinet for approval. After reviewing the policy in 2010, the bill was sent to Parliament for approval. The goal of the policy is to achieve the overall social, economic and cultural reintegration of older persons into mainstream society in order to enable them participate fully in the national development process. Though the policy has been approved by Cabinet, it is yet to be implemented. It is mandatory for all UN member states, which Ghana is a member, to develop national plans and strategies that aim at adding quality life to the years of older persons, as well as ensure that specific budgetary provisions and other sources of funds are made to facilitate the implementation of programs for older persons. Is Ghana going by this mandate? What is the state of the nation with regards to catering for the aged in the society? Ghana's economy is still facing liquidity challenges, with both revenue receipts and expenditure falling below their targets. The country has not been able to meet its revenue targets, and the overall expenditure, on the other hand, keeps increasing. This has thrown the country's 2013 budget out of hand. The government has attributed the problem to the rising wage bill, which represents about 72% of the country's total income, in addition to the non-disbursement of certain grants by Ghana's development partners for this year. Though government has removed subsidies on fuel and other utilities to help narrow the fiscal gap, as well as widen the tax net to include other areas which previously were ignored, Ghana's expected revenue of 14.15 billion Ghana cedis fell to 11.9 billion Ghana cedis at the end of the second quarter of 2013. This notwithstanding, government has been accused for overspending its budget by 8.7 billion Ghana cedis. A report by the World Bank ranked Ghana as the fourth country with the highest public debt. According to the report, Ghana's debt as at August this year stood at almost 44 billion Ghana cedis. This is about a half of the country's gross domestic product, which is valued at 85 billion Ghana cedis. Meanwhile, a London-based credit ratings agency Fitch has said Ghana's economy is at risk due to the tightening of liquidity conditions in the global financial markets. It noted that the country's vulnerability is as a result of its reliance on short-term capital flows to finance large current account and budget deficits. Despite these challenges, government still insists the economy is not broke. As Ghana has been declared as a lower middle-income country, conventional loans and grants which previously flowed to the country have now become more difficult to tap into. It is now imperative for government to focus on maximizing revenue generated internally. The country still has leakages at its ports of entry, whereby custom officers collude with importers to evade tax on imported goods. What is the state of the nation with regard to reducing its public debt and improving the economy?